Hello, Dreamcatchers, and welcome to another segment of the Writers Haven Show. I am your host, V. Helena, and we are still on location at the 2018 National Book Club Conference, where we are interviewing our star featured authors. And with me today is Lutishia Lovely, who is the author of several books, and she's also a spiritual life coach.
Life coach, transformational life coach.
Okay, so for those who don't know the difference or use them synonymously, what is the difference between the two?
Well, they can be used synonymously. In my case, a spiritual life coach is one who deals more with the person's spirit. What is making you happy or sad? What is your purpose? How do you go inside and find out who you really are? A spiritual life coach, as myself, because different people may have different meanings, but my thing is to help the person, help their spirit, as opposed to a life coach, which is trying to help your career and this or that. The reason I changed it to transformational life coach is because the spiritual actually evolves into that. Because what my goal is to help people transform into who they really are, transform into who they already are, their authentic self. So that's why, and also spiritual can kind of frighten people sometimes, like woo woo is like scary or whatever. So it's like, let me just help you transform, darling.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for explaining that. So speaking of spiritual, I became a lover of your writing back in the first series that you came out with, which was the Hallelujah series. And I think you told me that you recently had another installment of that series.
Yes, I did. I can't believe it's already been over 10 years since the first book in the Hallelujah series, which is Sex in the Sanctuary. And people always want to say, oh,
My favorite book, my favorite book.
they have sex in the church? Well, you have to read the book and find out. But that was the first one in 2007. And then book number 9 came out last year, A Date with Destiny. And next year will be book 10, First Husband. And listen, listen, nobody under the sound of my voice wants to miss this book. No, look, why have I been in church all day? That's why this started at my workshop. It's like, oh my God. But anyway, yeah, I'm so excited about First Husband. It's going to be pretty explosive, but that comes out next year. Yep.
So, do you consider yourself a Christian author? Are you in that genre of writing?
No,
Have you ever been?
no.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't even know that there were genres when I actually got into writing. I was just writing what I knew and writing the story that came through me and the characters that came through me. In Christian fiction, it's very specific that they allow very little, if any, cursing, that there is no explicit, sexual scenes and things like that. And most often that the end goal is that the person gets saved. That's normally the message at the end of a Christian fiction novel. But my novels deal with real people who curse, and they're Christians, and I know that no Christians that are listening right now have ever uttered a word, above darn or gosh darn it or that heifer. I know that they've never used the B word, they've never used the F word, they've never used the S word. I understand. My characters do. There's explicit cursing, there's explicit everything. So that's what took me out of the Christian author or the Christian fiction category. I consider my books contemporary fiction, and that's what they're listed as. However, they're very inspirational. People can get saved through them. People have written me. Christians have written me. Pastors' wives have written me. People who've made mistakes, unlike a lot of perfect people. The people that see themselves in my book really appreciate that their story is being told.
Okay, that's awesome. So, what inspires your work? Like, what is? Well, let me just let you answer the question.
Well, that series again was inspired by Spirit, literally telling me I never set out to be an author. It wasn't my dream when I grew up to be an author or anything like that. I am a creative artist. I'm an actor, producer. writer, director in movies. And that's the journey I was on when I was interrupted with this whole writing thing. When I was trying to write a play, and I was very frustrated because things weren't happening with it. And I kind of had an argument with God, really, and I was like, "What do you want me to do?" Yeah, I'm pretty dramatic, even with spirit. I was just like, "What do you want me to do?" And I literally heard in my head, "Sex in the Sanctuary," and it's a book, not a play. I literally heard those words, and I remember thinking, "Book," because I never considered myself an author in that way, but I had always had a gift of writing. I'd always been a voracious reader, and I'd always been able to imagine. I had a vivid and continue to have a very vivid imagination. And so once I said yes, which is the first step of any dream, saying yes. Once I said yes, I remember sitting down and I wrote like 20 pages. And I'd never written a book before. So I was inspired by Spirit to tell that story, but because I had grown up in the church as a PK, and in a small Baptist church in a small town, all the way up to being behind the scenes at a 10,000 plus mega church, I had many stories to tell and many voices that I knew that I could portray accurately. So it wasn't a stretch and it wasn't hard. I became very passionate about these people, and actually they would just come to me and tell me what their story was, and I would write it down. And that's how that series was inspired. And then once I became a professional author, traditionally published, etc., then I would just find what inspired me in life, and that is what would lead to my next work. Like the series after the Hallelujah series is the business series that deals with the soul food dynasty. Well, I'm a chef in my own mind. I love to cook. Yes, I'm a chef in my own mind. I am, Miss Flay, okay? And so I'm passionate about food. So it was really fun for me to take this, entity that I'm passionate about and write about it and have the people do some of the things that I would actually like to do. For instance, in the book, I came up with what I called a soul roll, which is an egg roll, but with greens inside of it and seasonings like that. And I kid you not, like the next year, soul rolls were everywhere.
Whoa.
Where's my money? That's that's what I want to know. Where is my money? Because there are soul rolls all over America. You know you're wrong. You know you read about that and all up in my business. I gave you the ingredients and everything. I'm not saying you can't get paid. Just where's my cut? Okay. Anyway, sorry.
We digress.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry. I couldn't catch myself. Excuse me. Okay. Yes. What were we saying?
Okay. All right. Well, let's skip to a whole nother subject. So we can get back on track. Who is Zuri Day?
Zuri Day is my romance writing alter ego. She is a diva, unlike myself, who's very nice and considerate. Zuri is a diva, honey. I don't even know if you get an interview with her. She's just, yeah. And she's.
If you could arrange that, I would really appreciate it. I would love to speak to Zuri.
I'll see what I can do. I don't know if but she's from the Caribbean. She's a hopeful romantic. She loves love. And so that's what her genre is. She writes romance only. That is her total focus. She's not big into conferences and stuff like that because it's work. If it's not the spotlight, if it's not, some fine brother, or if it's not money, Zuri, it's hard to get her to come out. Yeah, it's hard to find her. But I really enjoy her. She wants to say that she's the big author out of the two of us. And I kind of have to agree. It took me a while. I was hating for a minute, but then I realized that romance is the biggest genre in the publishing industry, of over $1 billion industry. So once I started seeing her checks, I was okay with her being a bigger A bigger author. Yes, yes, I was, let her have her shine.
Oh, okay, so the actual process of writing, and you, if Zuri writes differently than Lutishia, you can just point that out as well. But what is the technical process that you engage in when you're writing?
That is a very interesting question for me because I've listened to other writers and they have this grandiose, wonderful explanation for that, and I really don't. I don't get up at the same time every morning. I don't write every day. It's just I have books due all the time, so I'm just always writing. I don't have to necessarily be in a certain spot. Sometimes I go to a coffee shop, sometimes I am in my office, but because I write a lot, sometimes I'll move to the couch just because I just need a change up. You know what I'm saying? I'm normally, driven by the storyline and the do line, but I don't really, that's part of the gift. That's part of what makes this a gift for me. I don't have to go to any special process. When it comes to Zuri Day, readers are the one that said, "Oh my God, her voice is totally different than your voice. How did you do that?" I didn't. I didn't. And so it's like, how do you explain that? Like, I did not set out and say, okay, Zuri's going to write like this and Letitia's going to write like this. It just happened. And I can't explain that. It's part of the gift. So it's not a process that I engaged in to get there. You know what I'm saying? So I do listen to my characters. I let them drive the story. They always write a better book. And I've had interesting experiences when I have been in disagreement with the character. Oh my gosh, there was a book in the Hallelujah series. It was a preacher's passion. No, wait a minute. Was it it was one of the books. Because there's 9 going on 10. So it was within the first 3. And there was a love triangle. I won't give any spoilers, but there's a love triangle. And I thought I knew who the guy, it was a guy. I thought I knew who he was going to choose. In fact, in my outline and in my mind, I knew who he was going to choose. And the further I got into the storyline, I realized he was leaning towards the other person. And I'm literally having this intellectual internal fight with myself, like, you've got to go, you've got to choose this person, it's the right thing to do, it's the love won out, and he won out, and what the readers was his decision, not mine.
Wow, that is amazing how they talk to you, and if you want to write them all out of the book, and they're like, "No, I'm staying." You just have to listen to those voices because you birthed them, but then they control you.
It is so true. This person that I'm speaking of was exactly that. So it was the second book because in the first book, when he was introduced, he was just a minor character to move the story along. He wasn't even a major character. But then I learned something about him in the second book that totally changed the game of who he was in my mind because I was like, what? Yeah, I didn't know. And then once he shared all of who he was with me, it led the story in a totally different direction, and he actually became a really popular character who will show up again in First Husband, the book that comes out sometime next year.
Do you like love, or you just can't stand him? How do you feel about him?
I love him. And I love him because he is authentically who he is, which is, I kind of had a problem with that at first. Not because I was judging him, but because that's not who I wrote him to be.
Right. And that's why I asked you that question. It's like you had your mindset on who he was and what he was going to do for the story, and he just kind of took over. And that happens most times with writing. I haven't spoken to an author yet who has said something different about their relationship with these characters that they birth into the world. So that's great. We are at the National Book Club Conference. How important are book clubs in your life and in your writing and in your writer's journey?
They are the lifeblood of a lot of authors like myself, because word of mouth, especially in our community, is still the best form of mass communication. Yes, we have social media. Yes, we have, ads that we can put in radio and internet and websites and all of that. But when you have a reader tell another reader, oh, you got to get this book, there is no better endorsement. And so I absolutely love book clubs. I love to also talk with them. I tell them, you guys feel like I do about my characters. Like I can literally talk to them like the characters are real, because that's how they're coming to me. Like, how could you let such and such do that? And I'm like, could you believe it? Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? And so I just appreciate their passion for something that I've written. Writers, I always say that writers are nothing without readers. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, no one's around, doesn't make a sound. I always say, well, if a writer writes a book and no one reads it, does it matter? I mean, was it enough that they just put it on the paper? And it's like, that's a question that, I guess, yes, in a way that they, finished something that they wanted to do. But to me, the book doesn't really come alive until someone else reads it and you get their interaction on the characters and on the perspectives that there's offered in the novel. So they are everything. Book clubs are everything.
Great, great, great information. So, of all of your books, who is your favorite character and what is your favorite book?
That is so hard. That's actually impossible to answer. That is impossible to answer because different ones stand out for different reasons. For instance, the last um, series that I did is called the Shady Sisters Trilogy. Now, I wouldn't say that Jacqueline, the main character in this trilogy is a woman named Jacqueline who is obsessively in love with the main male character. And I wouldn't say she's my favorite, but she definitely is one of the most intriguing that I've ever written. And when readers, when I mention the Shady Sisters and I say Jacqueline, I get a lot of, oh yeah, Jacqueline. I guess if I had to narrow it down, I would go with Sex in the Sanctuary, because that's where it all began. That's where it all began, and I had no idea that the characters that birthed in that novel would be around 10 years later and that people would still want to read them. It always makes me want to tear up because it's like having a baby, and it's like this baby has grown up and there's all of these people who love the baby as much as I do, and they are interested in how it's growing and how are they doing and how are its siblings and all of that. So yeah, Sex in the Sanctuary started it all.
That was your very first book, and you kicked it right out the box. You got so many fans, myself included, with that book. So I was just very thrilled. Okay, so season 3, we just started this writers revealing questions, where we'll ask the author some questions that will give the readers a little bit more insight about them. So the first question is, what is your greatest accomplishment as a writer?
I would say just finishing that first book as an author, because I also write screenplays, stage plays, and all of that. So as a literary author, I would say that my biggest accomplishment was finishing that first book, because I didn't know that I could. I didn't even know I was a literary writer. I didn't know that it was in me. And just to push through to the end, this was Amazon, ebook, digital, create space, all of those tools that are now at the fingertips of writers. I entered the game not knowing one thing about publishers, not knowing anything about the industry, not even knowing how to get my book out there, but just having this desire to let these characters out of my head and onto the page. And it can be a scary proposition, you know what I mean? And so just to push through that, I would then say also one of my biggest accomplishments is a character that I do as an actor, and I also wrote her, and she's called a praying woman, and it's like 15 minutes of prose, and that poem, A Praying Woman, took me around the world, and so I'm very, very proud. And still, there's millions that haven't heard her. So stay tuned, because she may be coming back to life. But that character went a very long way for me.
That's awesome, and I do want to hear more about that. You know, when we finish this taping, I want to hear more. Um, and who are you reading?
Right now, I'm getting ready to read to Ra. Thank you. It's like, see how you messed up with how people mess up with Lutishia. Lutishia, I do that with Tarari because people were saying Tyra. Tyra, I was like, okay, which one? I'm getting ready to read her because I was in her workshop earlier and was just fascinated with just her story, her process. You know, as I said, I was a voracious reader before I became a writer, so I'm still a fan of excellent writing, and she writes excellently. I just finished Jennifer Lewis's memoir, Mother of Black Hollywood. Oh, to the M to the G. So honest and raw and open and funny and poignant, all of these things. So I just finished reading her. I also just finished a novel. I'm trying to remember her name, Naomi Smith, I think it is. Uh, and it's something of Bird Hill, and it took place in the Bahamas. That is so bad that I can't even remember the title. Like I literally just yeah, real colorful title. I mean, real colorful cover. Naomi Smith, and it of Bird Hills. Now it's driving me crazy. But anyway, it was set in Barbados, and so I just got just that Bayan culture, and it was just a very different kind of book. So I like books that are intriguing, books that are different, books that take me places. So those are just three of who I've either read very, very recently, like literally within the last month, and who I'm getting ready to read next.
Okay, last question. Do you have any advice for aspiring writers who are looking to get into the writing game or are going further along in their own writing journey?
That's a great question that I get all the time. You know, all authors get it, and I used to say write. You know, what advice would you give? You know, an aspiring writer? I used to say write. Now, I I take that a step further because everyone is a writer today. We had, when I got in the game, an average of 100,000 books published a year. It's now 5 million. Amazon, including self published. On Amazon right now, it is over 5 million books. So to just write is not enough. Respect, understand the craft, respect the craft, research the craft, read excellent writers, and just give a little, put a little more skin in the game. I don't want to discourage anyone who feels that they have a story to tell, because we all do. But it's not enough to tell the story any kind of way. It's, to me, disrespectful to the art and to the reader. It's disrespectful. So, what I would tell aspiring writers, study great writers, you know, because, you know, great people who read great writers become better writers. Um, Put a little skin in the game, whether it's a class at college, whether it's an online, whether it's a writer's group, or whether it's, you know, learn the craft, the art of writing. And that, I believe, will take you much, much further than the one or two or maybe five books that you'll do with no experience, not talking to anybody. And yeah, you might get a small following, but if you want to be in it for the long haul, become a learner as well as a writer. I've, you know, in the game over 10 years, and I'm still learning always from those who are, you know, who came before me and who are excellent writers as well. So that's what I would say.
Okay, well, thank you so very much for your time. I know that you had a workshop earlier today, and I think that you're on a panel discussion tomorrow to talk about publishing and where we are with that. So I want to thank you for spending some time here with us. And Dreamcatchers, as I have said before, we are going to air this as part of our season 3 of authors and filmmakers who will be on the show to talk about their craft. So thank you for joining us. And until next time, catch fire on purpose.
Oh, yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. Yeah, Dad. We're getting so wet.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education, what are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else? Or will you dare do something different? Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills. The smarts? Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget. That'd be cool. Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Open up your books to page 360.
Did you just look at your phone while you was in class? You played yourself.
Talking about inspirational quotes.
You gotta believe in yourself. Don't ever play yourself. The key is to make it, so make it.
Louise, can you give me an example of an inspirational quote?
Don't play yourself. The key is to make it.
And who said that?
I did. Now that's a major key alert.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at getschool.com.
Green hat, red hat. Oops. Red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt. Oops. Yellow pants, red pants, green pants. Oops.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.